What's up? What's up? What's up?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Almost Patriots Podcast. It's a big shout out to Mitch Dodge and Color Love for that track. Tell Me How You Feel. It just released last week. Both homies of mine. Shout out to those guys. Was with Mitch last night on his stream. Big shout out to Turbo.fm. We surpassed, surpassed 900 subscribers last night, which was really cool on the Mitch Dodge show. You can check that out. That's every Wednesday at 6 p.m. on Twitch, /Mitch Dodge, or on Turbo.fm. So that was really cool. He's busting out some really cool tracks. Yeah, that's pretty much it. How's everybody doing, guys? We all had a big trip to New York last week. I don't know if you guys saw the episode for our viewers, but we were hammered.
Two of the three of us were hammered.
It's really funny that you're the only one that in your own city when we came to visit you wasn't having a good time.
On Thursday night, you guys decided to drink all day.
In our defense, we didn't start drinking until like 3-ish.
Yeah,
it wasn't
we just
all
drank,
day.
Yeah, we just drank.
Sorry,
really,
my bad.
We just drank really fast. Absolutely, we just drank really fast. But anyways, that was good. We went to New York last week, guys. Went to go visit Mike in Manhattan, and had a great time. Saw the Capitals beat the Rangers. Went to the.
They're gonna keep shoving it in my face. Go ahead, keep doing it.
In overtime. It was a fun game.
For those that would like to know that Ricardo is from the Washington area, so when they beat any New York team, any Washington team beats New York, he likes shoving it in my face. So appreciate that, Ricardo.
Yeah, I'm there for pickleball. Anytime the Washington team can beat a New York team, I'll be
Commanders.
There. Yeah, whatever it is, Social Security checks, doesn't matter. I'm there. Whoever
Deal.
gets the most. But had a great time. Really relaxed. It was windy and cold, and then popped down to DC to see my family a little bit. But back now in San Diego. What about you guys, Chris? Back in Indianapolis?
It's beautiful. It's beautiful here.
Nice.
I went on a run for the first time in a while. It's nice.
Very
Congratulations.
Cool. Congratulations.
All right, I gotta tell you guys a story before we get too far.
Okay.
Tell us the story.
Went to the gym. Not important. Driving back, I decided to wash my car because it still got rain spots from the airport. And it's one of those car washes where you like lock your tires and put in neutral and just like ride through the wash. Mm-hmm. So lady in front of me is in this like RAV4-ish type SUV, and we get to the end where it dries, and there's big light that says like green, like put your car out of drive into drive or whatever. And there's like a attendant that comes out of this door I'd never seen before, and it's like knocking on her window and like trying to get her attention. And I'm like, what is going on? Like I'm just listening to my audiobook in the car, just like what's happening. And then she like rolls out the thing, and I'm looking at the lady, and she's looking at the thing. I'm like, what is happening? And all of a sudden, her car just doesn't stop. It drives through the stop sign, through the street, over the curb, into the ditch. And she looks at me, and she was sleeping. I was like, so she was gonna wake her up.
Oh my
God!
God!
She fell asleep in like the 45-second car wash. It's like not very long.
She must have had a long night or a long day.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I drove away.
You didn't help her, you scumbag?
He's fine. There's already somebody else helping her. So
You're not a great American.
Yeah, really. You're a horrible American.
All
Help
right.
thy neighbor.
That was hilarious, man. I can't believe that. But that's definitely not unreasonable. So, guys.
Ricardo, good job. That was hilarious. Okay, next topic.
So I'm going to start the show off in a different way. I haven't told you guys this.
Uh-oh.
But before we were in New York, I got the opportunity to be, if you guys caught the 2 shows ago, we were in Vegas for the Happens radio conference, which was pretty good. Shout out Happens. Shout out Scorpion Percussion.
That's my job.
Yep. And so while I was there, I picked up a Britney Spears tarot card deck.
Oh my god.
And so I think every show what I'm going to do, and I've been shuffling the deck while we've been talking. Yeah, I'm going to pick a card from the tarot deck, and then I'm going to read it and see what it symbolizes. So give me a second here, guys.
Everybody that's listening, this is a first. We had no idea he was going to do this, which is making me very concerned.
All right, are these cards even like appropriate?
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah.
All right,
Britney Spears tarot card? I mean, what is this going to say,
I'm getting concerned, Chris, right now.
All right, here we go, guys.
Who is this for? Is this Mike's card? Is this
no?
This
is my card, and it's The Trailblazer, guys. The Trailblazer. So today's card is the Trailblazer. And so if you're out there and you do tarot or whatever, you can look this up online and see kind of what it means. But so for me, I'm going to look it up later. So Trailblazer this week, guys. The Trailblazer. That's how we're going to do it.
That
If you-
was
I was
so
waiting in
disappointed. So
excitement. Yeah,
disappointed.
I was waiting in excitement for him to pick a card and tell
I
us
peed
what it
myself a
was.
little bit, waiting for
no,
this
but I
to
have a
happen,
book
nothing
here.
happened.
So
Oh, he's got a book, ladies
Tell
and
you
gentlemen. He's got a book.
the-
Let's see.
The Trailblazer signifies on record. School teacher, seeker. I'm gonna have to find this person here, and I can't find her. Go ahead, guys. Tell a story. I'll be more prepared for this later.
So anyway, Chris, let me ask you a question. When that car went into a ditch, at any moment did you try to get out,
I
or
thought
did you
about
just
it.
watch it and
I
then
thought
let
about
them
it.
like dry your car
Well, I
off,
was
and then
still
you
in the
were
car
like,
wash.
"All
I was
right, I'm
stuck-
out."
I was stuck in the car wash, so I had to wait until I could like drive, and then once I got there, somebody else was already helping her. So.
Did you give him a tip, like, and say thank you because they probably gave CPR to the person that fell into the ditch and needed an
He was
ambulance?
fine. So her car wasn't even. I mean, her bumper might be a little, jacked, but
Destroyed? Yeah.
no. It had enough clearance to make it over into the ditch, but she was just like at an angle, so like her front bumper was in the mud, and like she couldn't back up. So it's gonna be
Gotcha.
a while before
Hold
she
on.
gets out of there.
Hold on. I think Ricardo found it. Ladies and
Uh-oh.
gentlemen,
I found
here
it,
comes the
guys.
big reveal.
Here we
Fly
go, guys. So
Drexler,
the card I
Oregon
picked
Trailblazer.
today was the Trailblazer, and you guys tomorrow eclipse. By the way, yeah, I'm spooky like that. So there's a whole bunch of stuff about Britney Spears here on how she was a trailblazer.
God.
So I'm not going to read that, but for
Oh,
those of
my
you out
God.
there watching, the Trailblazer is about innovation and excitement and starting trends. Keep the Trailblazer close at hand for important meetings and new chapters of your life ahead. There you go. That's how it goes, guys. Straight from the Britney Spears tarot deck, brought to you by Almost Patriots.
Shout out Scorpion Percussion.
Shout out Scorpion Percussion. Oh man, that
So we're starting off good today, ladies and
Just
gentlemen.
on fire, on fire.
We got
Dude,
Chris
this
over
is
here who
great.
watched somebody in need and didn't help, and
Well,
Ricardo
I
is
mean,
reading Britney Spears cards over here. We're going good. Okay, let's continue it.
Yeah, let's get into the topics, guys. So I don't know about you guys, but did we forget about the Epstein list, Fort Knox, and the JFK files? I feel like those were all things that last week, couple weeks ago, were really important, and I haven't heard jack shit about any of this stuff. And do we care? That's the other question. So, guys, what do you think?
Chris, you can start.
I mean, of course, we give a shit, but like, at this point, who cares? I mean, does it have a real impact on anything? I mean, the whole political landscape is kind of up in the air right now. Everybody's mad at Trump, and Trump's doing God's work. And at this point, I'm just waiting for the economy to go back up, and prices are down, economy's down. It'll recover. I think we gotta go back to we don't care so much about how the federal government is involving in our life. I remember that time before COVID where like I lived in California for 10 years. I never once thought that the California bureaucracy was going to ever really impact my life until COVID. And it's basically since COVID, I feel like the federal government has been in my fucking ass. Like, and I'm tired of it, honestly.
Ricardo, do
Yeah.
you want to make the joke, or do I want to make the joke?
No way, dude. I'm still recovering from my tarot card bit.
Yeah. No, I actually agree with Chris. I really don't care. The one thing is, don't promise something if you're not going to deliver on it. That's the thing that makes me
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm
pissed off
thinking, too.
about it. Like that just pisses me off. If there is an Epstein file or a list, you keep on making these small updates. Just fucking release it. Hold your word. Fulfill what your promise was, and then let's move on. We've got to a point where it's like, but the funny thing is a lot of people aren't actually talking about it. It's kind of like faded a little bit. If you guys haven't realized, like the media, nobody in the news is talking about it. It's starting to fade out because so much other shit's going. So I think a lot of people have lost interest
Well, it's
as
too
well.
much cry wolf, like, oh, we're gonna do this thing, and everybody's like, and then it's like, nah, just kidding. And they do that
Yeah,
too
the
many times, and
dopamine
it's like,
high,
fuck,
the
dude, I don't
dopamine
care
high.
anymore. Yeah, just
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I feel like well, I was thinking about this. Like, everyone's got like a limited bandwidth, right? And if people are out there producing content and asking questions and taking time out of their day for these topics that are literally like don't necessarily matter and aren't going to ever get adjudicated properly, that's kind of where I'm like, I don't care anymore. I don't care. Just do whatever your fucking job was before you found out these people were involved, and like continue to try to be better at that. You know, like fine, don't release that. I don't give a shit. I didn't even know that motherfucker was alive before the news put him on that. I don't care. You know, it's kind of like what I was saying about like how the internet has like shown parts of the world and life to people that should never be shown that stuff. You know what I mean? Like, because it just distracts you, right? So you see a guy on a plane, right, who like .com millionaire, and you're like, and then you see your wife and you're like, my life sucks. No, you should have never seen that dude. You should have just hugged your fucking wife, and you know, like, don't see that dude on the plane. Don't worry about that fucking dude. I don't care about Epstein. I would like to know that our gold is safe. How's that? And you know, I think the JFK thing is a tragedy, but I mean, you can only pull a wiener so long before it starts to hurt, buddy. So I'm about over this shit.
In the Gene Hackman story than freaking Epstein at this point.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I don't even know what happened. I just know he died with his wife and his
crazy.
dog.
It's so crazy.
It's weird, is what it is.
Yeah, so his wife is significantly younger. I don't know the actual age gap, but she's like quite a bit younger. And so when the police finally found Gene Hackman, like him and his wife and his dog were all dead. And so originally they were like, whatever that stuff's called.
Death.
The silent killer.
Death. Carbon monoxide?
Whatever. Carbon
monoxide. Yeah,
I don't know why that was hard.
poisoning.
But they thought it was carbon monoxide. Then they thought it was like a murder-suicide and this all this stuff. Well, it turns out that Gene Hackman has really bad dementia. And his wife died from a disease you can only get from rats. Like, I can't remember the name. It's some disease that you can only get from like rodents. And so now it looks more like that she like died from this whatever rat thing that she probably got from traveling or whatever. And Gene Hackman was just demented and like just didn't notice and was, you know, not taking his medication anymore because he wasn't getting it from his wife.
Can they determine the time of death?
Well, they said the last time that anyone saw his wife was like on the 11th, and he was found on the 18th. He died on the 18th.
Okay.
And so then of course the dog was in a crate the whole time.
And then just died from starvation.
Yeah, and so that it looks more like that she just died from some random disease, and then Gene Hackman died of a heart attack. Okay. I think what happened was she
died from a random disease. He forgot about it.
He finally realized that she was dead after like a week, and then had a heart attack. But like he was just out of his mind. I mean, he's demented, right? I mean, and forgot to take care of the dog, forgot to like help his wife.
We gotta get Gene Hackman's kids on here to confirm this this side of the story, because this is the first time I'm hearing about this. This is crazy.
It's insane. It makes you like really terrified about getting dementia and living like.
I have dementia right now. I'm trying to forget the last week when you guys visited.
I have it. It's called marijuana. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was like, man, I feel bad. I mean, it's just shitty, like really shitty. But
yeah, that's horrible.
I hadn't heard that either. That's actually really. I mean, it makes sense. Did it happen? Who knows? Hopefully, we'll know. But I mean,
well, yeah. So they know how she died, and they know how he died, and know that how the dog died. But nobody was there in the house for the 7 days between the last time anybody saw her and then when they found him. So it was like nobody's really sure, but I mean that's what it looks like. It looks like she just died from some weird rodent disease, and her husband had dementia.
Damn.
Couldn't do anything. It's just
that's insane. Yeah, that's tough, dude. That's fuck. Well, I mean, he didn't seem like a troublemaker to me, so I wasn't really like worried about
great
any
actor.
secrets that he had. Yeah.
Oh absolutely. Yeah, I love Gene Hackman. It was great. It's kind of sad.
I was reading this article, guys, or this, I saw this post, and it kind of blew my mind.
Water.
Right. So, being in the music industry and shit, we go to these places and we drink their water, and it's expensive. And so this Las Vegas
why do you
nightclub.
Drink their water, Ricardo? Why? What are you doing that requires?
Yeah. Why do you need water, huh? Why do you need to hydrate?
Because I don't drink. I don't like the alcohol. I'm not an alcoholic like you two.
Yeah. Oh, right.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Look, I can see the liver spots a mile away from both you guys. Anyways, Las Vegas nightclub. So these guys actually, no, not at all. I don't like that stuff. Nightclub. It's called ketamine, buddy. No, Las Vegas nightclub heats up this. They literally got accused of heating up the bathrooms to help dehydrate people. and sell $12 water to, yes, exactly. And so the article also goes on to talk about how the water industry at the nightclub alone is a $300 million industry here in the United States. $300 billion, maybe $300 billion industry,
No,
something
it's
crazy.
Billion. That sounds better. Yeah.
Something crazy high, right? We'll have to check that out. And so, this also made me think of, remember when like all these celebrities started sort of water companies, like Mark Wahlberg and some of these guys, they started sort of like water companies. And I also looked up a graph, and so it seems that the younger generations are spending an enormously less amount on alcohol than the past three previous generations, right? Like hundreds of percent less. And so, if this is something that some of these guys sort of like understood, either by having kids themselves or whatever, it's a really good strategic move to go ahead and say, hey, well, like I want to make money from what these people want. And so people are spending money on water. And it seems that a lot of the younger generations are going to music things and experiences, and they're just, whether they're taking drugs or not, they're just not drinking. They don't prefer drinking, right? I blame every drunk ass generation before us who drank at home and treated their kids like shit. And so, hey, guess what? We're not drinking.
Yeah, alcohol sales might be down, but marijuana is definitely up. It's just a different vice that they're spending their money on.
Yeah, there's alternate methods.
Yeah.
Now. It's much more socially
Being-
acceptable to smoke weed.
Well, I wasn't. I mean,
than it was.
and that's a good way to look at it from like a mental health perspective. And I was just purely looking at it from a financial perspective, as far as like markets, right? You know what I mean? Like, okay, so how can we still continue to make money, from consumption, right? And do so in a way that isn't about trying to convince, right, a generation that they should drink alcohol, and then you just don't. Instead of with deceptive advertising and all that stuff, you take that money and you start making water. Right, you just make a new product. The whole point of you having all that capital as a corporation isn't to use it to manipulate people to continue to use a product they don't. You have some capital to innovate, and you can be the first one to be able to do so. And you have all the market data. And so don't be greedy. Don't be lazy. You know what I mean? Like, do the thing, follow the statistics. Don't spend the money on manipulative advertising, although I do make a living doing that. But you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yes, 300 billion.
300 billion. There you go.
Global bottled water market. 300.
That's a global bottle market, though.
That's
not
I mean,
just in
there's
Vegas.
raves everywhere. I mean, what's the global alcohol?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a lot.
That's a good question.
Yeah,
Got to be more than that.
I would look it up, but I'm not going to. But anyways, that's so. And besides that, I think it's just so shady for anyone who thinks that, like, it's almost like they're going to beat the house, that like these nightclubs and restaurants are there for the
Hell no.
consumers.
Nobody
Yeah.
ever beats the house.
Well, I mean, we talked about this a little bit, but it's just like it doesn't seem like anybody's putting out products anymore for the quality of the product. They're only doing business to make money, and so like
Yeah.
they don't really care who gets hurt in the process, as long as at the end of the day they're making money, and it's
The board and the
just sad.
shareholders.
just sad.
Board and the shareholders. That's why it's every company
The
nowadays
two
is called
most
shareholder
the two
value.
most detached roles in that whole transaction are the ones making the most money. Just FYI,
Yeah.
because the shareholders and the board are the most detached. Neither are involved with the daily operations of the business, basically.
Yeah, but there's the
mostly-
motivation. The motivation is to make them wealthy from the people running
Yeah.
the company or whatever. It's just
That sounds like slavery.
Yeah, they're intentionally tainting the water, but they don't care because the water, it costs them cheaper to.
what's sad is that like so I think the problem is like if you look at like let's just go with the movie industry as an example, right? The best movies ever made like did really well, like financially, right?
No shit. That was.
And-
You mean like the artistically best
The
movies
artistically
also
best
did?
movies did
Okay.
financially the best, right? I mean, some
Okay.
of the best movies ever made, like from all the metrics that would make a movie great, also have the box office records, right? And so the problem is though is a lot of times, that's a small opportunity, right? I mean, you can make the most creative shit in the world you want, but it's not always gonna hit, right? You're still kind of gambling in a way so. What people have done is instead of chasing the creative dream, they try to create a product to make money, and it ends up doing worse for
Well,
themselves and the people that are involved
yeah, they make a product that just fits in a box. They just try to refrain that product or tailor it a different way in
to
that
an
box.
algorithm or
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
there's a lot of forces at play in industry, and I think you guys, it's really actually refreshing to hear that, because I remember I used to argue with my family about intrinsic value and creativity, and they were like, whatever the market pays is what it costs. I'm like, okay, economist.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah, great. How did that work out for you, economist? But you know what I'm saying? Like, it's good to hear you guys thinking that way because there is a lot of sort of like creative thinking and creative sort of like planning that is going into some of these companies, the ones that are a little bit more astute and a little bit more like progressive. And I think it's helping. It's helping create new products, and a lot of this has to do with customer experience and feedback as well. Because if you're serving a customer or you're solving a problem, you really want to be able to measure that, right? And if you swing an axe, at a piece of wood, you want to know if you hit the fucking tree, right? You don't just want to keep swinging axes and say, "Hey, I get paid to swing axes." And so, it's important to take all of that data, and use it and not to innovate consistently, right? And to allocate resources in a way that's going to help not the product, but the consumer feel like they're getting better of a value. Because the more loyal consumers you have, the inevitability that the stock price and that the product will have, and then you gain trust, which is a very difficult thing, I think, to have beyond the transaction today. And once you've gained a group or a constituency that trusts you, then you have the ability to offer them more than one product, right? And so, like, you look at what Apple's kind of done, and I think they've done a really good stewardship sort of with their customer base. They don't introduce everything. They don't say, hey man, here's an Apple shoe. Like, no, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like an Apple record label. But I think that they've tried to introduce more products, when they can, that sort of fit with what they're doing, and they use their money to do it. And like, no, they don't put out bullshit. Even the stuff that nobody uses is still cool in some way or another. So I think that's a really good example of how I would like to see sort of creative innovation being used more.
Yeah, the
From
part
a
of the
corporate
problem
level.
with that is though, what was it? It's like 60 something. I can't remember, 60 or 70% of the consumer decision making is based on the brand, right? It's like over 50%. I can't remember. It's below 70. That
It depends on
well,
the
yeah,
country too,
from
but
the
the
U.S., right?
U.S. for
So,
sure.
but does that require trust? It means the brand is, yeah,
It
yeah,
depends
the
on
brand is
the
making a
country too.
product,
Yeah.
and clearly it's doing well enough that people trust that they're going to get a good product, right? I guess in
Yeah,
some capacity.
I can tell you honestly,
So,
like Adidas makes a very good tennis brand.
all right, Federer. So, like for example, like just from marketing segmenting and stuff, like so the Hispanic population is the one of the highest brand loyal consumers consumption based on historical data. So what that means basically, like if they like Kellogg's and you're like, hey man, here's a Kellogg's like nuclear power plant, they're like, yeah, we want the Kellogg's nuclear power plant, right? And so like it's like cool, right? And they're it's also centered around this like very big family
Right.
focus, right? So they're like that's their brand. The family is the brand. But in the United States, because we sell a lot of different things, mostly services, okay, and there's a tangibility issue. The largest determinant for consumption is status, not trust. And so, like, even if you don't know if the Ferrari will get you where you're going, you want it because you want people to see you in it, right? And so that's what drives a lot of consumption here in the United States, statistically.
Yeah, I mean,
Or silver sneakers.
well, I mean, like in the the business, in school, they basically said the same thing. It's oh my god.
Shout out
That-
camper.
Barbie.
Shout out
So
camper.
a lot of times you can just make a product and like as if you sell it at a higher price than your competitors, people will buy it just because they think that it's better.
I feel like a lot of consumers are starting to be more aware of the cost of products. They realize like you can go out to Amazon, buy a item of clothing that's the same as Nike, different brand, look exactly identical. One's 20, one's 90, the $90 Nike brand. The other one is an Amazon brand for $20. I
Right,
think
but
a
that
lot.
doesn't mean that people will buy the $20 brand.
Oh,
Like,
they do.
yeah,
They
I know
do
people
because
do, but
Well, that's
and
what I'm
it's
talking about.
becoming
So
more
the
apparent.
it's where it's a little bit more about status, right? So that's the branding, that's the status, that's what we're selling. And Nike's a really good example of sort of like we call it like consumer goods brand, right? Something tangible that's really, really destroyed.
I'm gonna be a devil's advocate here. There's a reason why Nike is starting to lose a lot more market share in their industries. In athletic apparel, you have companies like Under Armour taking up more marketing. You have Puma's taking up more market space, and you have other companies that are starting to enter those
No.
market spaces now.
I think that's definitely part of it, but I think a lot of the reason that Nike is losing revenue is because Nike was fundamentally founded as a sports company, performance gear for athletics, and sports gear has become now part of fashion. And so now the companies that are doing the most creative things with their shoes are the ones that are getting rewarded by the market.
Okay, if you say so. I was just saying that other companies are starting to take more market share. It has to do. I think there's an element of the brand recognition that's still there, but I also think it has to do with obviously cost plays a part in it nowadays. But I also think, like you said, in a certain perspective, it also has to do with design. It has to do with, the fashionable sense. Nike used to have a stronghold. They just don't anymore. And, I don't want to say they just don't. They still do. They have a sizable market share. They still have a sizable market share, but they're starting to lose it more and more each year.
There's some politicization too that didn't help them. So
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Nike person. Like I like Nikes. Before I bought these, I had Nikes. I'm pretty Nike.
I grew up in Oregon, Nike forever, but I wear more Under Armour now because Nike went a little weird on me for a while.
I have Amazon
did
Basics.
they go weird?
Yeah,
I wasn't paying attention to that.
I was, unfortunately. It's kind of sad, but
yeah, I have Amazon
the product
Basics.
quality went down and they went a little weird. So yeah.
I mean,
All right, let me try this joke the third time. I have Amazon Basics.
Amazon Basics are great. I'll buy their
What is
12
that?
pack
What is
of
Amazon
underwear.
Basics?
Amazon Basics is basically just a T-shirt for like $5 or a pair of shorts for like $5.
I don't
Yeah, it's
really
like
buy that much stuff on Amazon.
it's pretty good, man. It's pretty good. All right, guys. This is kind of cool too. That I saw that a U.S. robotics company has made a deal to let humanoid robots build themselves. All right, that's kind of
The
crazy.
world's over. I'm done. Terminator, here we come.
100%, right? 100%. I also saw.
You wanna fix that real quick though?
What did I spell wrong?
Robot company big deal to let humanoid robots build them.
Robotics.
Robotics, yeah, there we go.
Is that like
Robotics.
a
there you go.
drug that you
I
sell
can't see
for weight
that.
loss?
How can you see that? Do you have go-go gadgetarian vision or something?
I have pretty good vision. I'm actually sitting
does.
far enough away from the TV where I can read. Otherwise,
Hold on. By the way, Chris,
bust out.
I'm wearing glasses, and
Listen,
I'm like
Chris,
right
I
next.
bust out
It's
my sweet
definitely
reading
not
glasses now
misspelled.
that I'm old.
It's definitely not misspelled.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
You look like a teacher. With
I
the
do look like a
glasses
teacher.
on.
That's
I'm actually too
hilarious.
far away from the TV for them to work.
That should be your Christmas card.
I'm
Yeah,
a
that should
teacher.
be.
With
No,
with
it's that sweater with the glasses.
green
With the
sweater.
glasses, yeah, 100%.
That should definitely be your Christmas. But this is kind of
I'll put
freaky,
them on
right,
for the
guys?
Marxism.
I saw this other post where this guy was at a Tesla factory and he was like, he was in front of the fence and then this car drove by and he's like, that's a self-driving Tesla that just got finished on the factory floor and is driving itself to the dock to be shipped. And I was like,
Well,
holy shit.
Yeah. They have
Yeah,
a whole
but-
assembly line that drives itself. It's crazy.
That's
Yeah, but
ridiculous,
the,
guys.
The whole thing, though, is like, I hate to put it this way, is what did you think robotics, with the evolution of robotic systems, was going to do? Like everybody was talking about some of this, advanced technology. Like, it's never going to take my job. It's never going to be able to do these things. What did you think was going to happen? These companies talked about it for years. So this doesn't surprise me. Warehouse work. Look at some of the Amazon factories with the robotics.
I'll tell you, it's a really good question, Mike. And I was just thinking about that. I think my assumption was that there would be like little robots in my house that I got to kind of test out and play with before they put them in the big shit. Does that make sense? Like I figured, you know what I mean? Because like as a kid, like I played with little toys, right? And so like as somebody introducing something to the market, I was like, I would hope that there'd be something that I at least interacted with that wasn't like life
feel like
threatening. Like, if I get in a car and that robot doesn't work, I might die. But if
like
there's
that
like a
might
little
have been the
robot,
case.
like cooking a steak in my house, like, and the steak doesn't get cooked right, like that's not gonna be that big of a deal. Like they should have, it's a big jump
Well, I feel like that would have been the case if the chip market, the semiconductor market wasn't so bad. There's not enough chips to do something like that.
You know,
It doesn't exist.
make some more semiconductor or factories
There's only one, and it's in Taiwan.
for
So,
now. I mean, that motherfucker might get blown up, you know.
and
And that's it for In the News, guys. Moving on to our first topic. This topic is mental health. Is this Mike's topic?
Yep, this is my topic. I wanted to talk about mental health for a little bit. I'm going to start the segment out and give a little bit of a personal story. So, growing up, I never thought mental health really existed. I come from an old school model where when it comes to your emotions, when it comes to stress, when it comes to anxiety, depression, you just throw it into a ball and you shove it down as far as possible. You don't talk to anybody. You kind of figure out ways to deal with it. I remember I was at a job once, and I remember I was talking to an attorney, and the attorney was being very heartfelt with me, talking about a cousin who had like severe depression, severe anxiety, and had to take medication. It was just going crazy. And I remember saying to her, I was like, mental health is not an issue. I go, that person was just weak. They have to like get stronger. And she was like, that was one of the worst things you ever said. And I was like, no, I'm just a realist, thinking like, because I've never experienced it, that it doesn't really it's not something that happened. Well, I can say my thought process has completely changed. As of recent, I've seen kind of the impact of anxiety, stress, and depression, what it does to people very close to you. I've dealt with anxiety and stress in the past, but I didn't really ever, it never really hit me that hard. I always realized kind of how to control it. I just have a different thought process, I think, than a lot of people in certain areas. I just realized what triggers it, and I realized how to kind of control it in a couple of better areas. I could get hell of a lot better at it. It definitely still hits me. But I've started noticing that everybody around myself, like lately at work, personally, everybody goes through it. Now, they go through it at different stages. The first thing I'm going to say is when you're dealing with it, you got to figure out the triggers for you. It could be work, it could be relationships, it could be children, it could be financial. You have to kind of understand what it is. Second, you have to make a plan. And what I mean by making a plan is how to reduce anxiety, stress, or depression, or if you need to go speak to somebody, or if you need to go work out, change diets.
So like actionable stuff. Actionable stuff.
Yeah, if you have to talk to somebody. The third thing I have to say is find a support network. If it's other people going through the same thing, if it's family, if it is a psychiatrist, if it's a neurologist, somebody that you need to talk to, some people that you have issues. Lastly, also, I'm not a big component of medication. I never was in my entire life, but I understand. I've seen how bad some people get, and if you need some medication to help you, then go out and get it.
assuming you've done all the things that you just mentioned.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you guys, have you ever had any mental health issues where, like, Chris, you've talked about it before. Ricardo, have
Oh
you?
my God, we could talk about this for like the next 10 hours.
Consistently. I'm having one right now.
Well, the thing I have to say is, how did you deal with him?
Oh man, dude, this is gonna be a whole nother fucking show. I mean, let me jump in because I know Chris is more organized than I am. So let's talk about anxiety. All right. So like anxiety is something that I'd struggle with. Like I would go through bouts. Like there'd be like as a kid, not really, happy times, and then like there might be something that happened that would kind of spark or trigger like an anxious time, and then it would take me a couple months to kind of like get back and comfortable with myself. But like, most recently, I did have a bout of pretty bad anxiety. And each time, I think there is, two things that I've learned, that are the components. And so there's the way that it feels viscerally. Okay. And that's the way that your body feels, the way that your head feels. And that really influences the way that you think. And that's definitely one of the things that I think is present with anxiety. It's something that you feel in your body. And then the second is, what's causing the anxiety from a logical perspective. And it took me a little while, and this last one was pretty bad. I know Chris was there pretty much every. Mike was there too. These are actually the only, not the only. There's a lot of other good people. These are the two guys I talked to the most during that period of time, and and I'm very grateful for that. But it was difficult to sort of move past that visceral feeling. And then what I realized, and I think Chris kind of saw this a little bit earlier, I just didn't listen to his ass, was that a lot of the anxiety was rooted for me in a sense of self-doubt. And not in a sense like, oh man, like, because I've achieved stuff, right? And I know I can do things, right? But like in a sense of self-doubt that like there was something that I needed to achieve, right? To be okay, something that is for society, some sort of like what my dad thought I wanted, or what I thought society
External
wanted,
validation.
some sort of external validation. And after being in pain and being anxious, and it really sucks, like you realize, I don't want to feel that way again. So when you start to do the things that you're afraid of, right? They start kind of bringing you out of that. And I'm not saying crazy things, but like like little by little, and then and if those things bring you joy, then even better. And so those two components of anxiety, sometimes it helps to divide and conquer. Is that the visceral feeling, the feeling that you're feeling in your body, right? It's not reality. It is not reality. It is not what your environment is telling you. Okay, when somebody fires a gun and that's different. There's no gun in the room, guys. And then the second reason is, why am I falsely feeling like this? Like, where does that lie? And it always lies in some sense that you feel like you have the ability to make it through a specific situation that you've created in the future, right? It's always because of that. That's where the anxiety
Because you
lies.
don't
Yeah,
feel
that
like,
you feel like
yeah.
you don't have the ability to overcome or to deal with a
Yeah,
certain situation
you're
in the
not in
future.
control. Yeah, you're not in control.
Not just not control, but like just the ability in general. Like anxiety can come from the fact when you take a test because you don't know the outcome of the test. So by default, there's an anxiety there because you're like, oh shit, am I 100? Am I 99? And so you take the test and then you get your score and the anxiety's gone. And so the anxiety comes from a doubt in your ability to face that specific thing that's giving you the anxiety.
What
Well,
about you,
so
Chris?
before I go into my whole thing, what Ricardo just said is important. I think that's why the victimhood mentality that we see a lot today is so bad, because essentially what you're doing, and when you consider yourself a victim in whatever capacity that generates, you're giving up control to the external environment to control your emotions, because you're a victim. You have no control over it. And so it's not up to you whether or not you're happy or sad or whatever, because like it's an external feeling, right? So then what ends up happening is you try to control your environment because that's the only way to regulate your emotions. And when the environment's out of control, you're out of control. And so it's, anyways, that's not a good place to be. I was depressed for, I don't know, ever, long time. And fortunately, I had a, I had, so I have daddy issues. So like I've always trying to live up to some unrealistic expectation. And so that's why I ended up joining the Marine Corps. So I was like deeply depressed, but decided to join like one of do the hardest thing ever, because I had this like massive chip that I will never overcome. So that was the fortunate side effect of that, right? What really saved me from my depression was when I finally got to a place where I wasn't just drowning in cortisol from stress. And I had been, fortunately, in the military, they've been much better about this in the last probably decade than they were my first decade. Was like they're all, every time you go see a doctor about whatever it is, they always like, do you need to see a mental health professional? Like, it's like a default question at the end of every interaction. And it just finally, like the one time, like, hey, would you like to see a mental health professional? And it was like, sure, You know what I mean? Like, and I was finally in the right place where I was like, okay, maybe that's something I could do. And the thing that really helped me more than anything else was understanding that I wasn't alone in this problem. And so they gave me a workbook, and my therapist was like, "Hey, take a look at this workbook. Look at chapter 4, go through it, and then like tell me what you think." And literally, in this workbook, there was like this I can't remember specifically, but I'm gonna use this as an example. Like you stub your toe, and then there's a thought as an outcome from you stubbing your toe, and it was like you stub your toe and you're never gonna get married. And that was like, and like this, and it had like 10 of them. These like just ridiculously, there's no rational explanation for how you go from stubbing your toe to like you're gonna be alone for the rest of your life. But there was like 10 of these things, and like 7 of them I had thought regularly, and I was like, oh my god, like this isn't like I'm broken. This is just like something happened to me that has like set me on this trajectory, and now I need to figure out what happened and how I can sort of mitigate it now, right? But before that, I just thought I was broken. I thought it was like something I just was like never gonna overcome, and it was just something I had to work through, and I had to just live with being depressed. I would recommend like what Mike said. Don't just hold that shit for the rest of your life. Like you're probably not broken. You probably just have some shit you need to resolve.
I was going to read this just because I think one of the things that you said is really important, and I think we didn't like talk about it. The fact is that we weren't alone, right? Like I was able to call you guys, and like the feeling of loneliness, and I think anxiety is something that can easily be mitigated. And I think that ladies do this really well by talking to each other, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, if a girl feels weird, she grabs the first woman in the room and she's like, "I feel like this." You know what I mean? And I think we can learn a lot from that. But the sense of being alone, I think, is something that kind of couples anxiety as well. And so I had a conversation today with one of my buddies, the guy Mitch Dodge, who made this track. He's a great guy. I don't think he'll be mad that I read this part. But we were talking about all sorts of shit, like the simulation and everything and energy. And we got to a point where I had said, well, I think that your thoughts are how you shape energy for yourself. You control your reality with your thoughts. Don't think negative shit. And he had said, it can be a lot easier said than done for people, right? Which I think a lot of people realize. And so I responded with, that's why we have each other.
Yeah.
That was the end of the conversation.
And the funny thing is, and it's not really funny, but it's every one of us, like we have these thoughts, and the way that we handle it is completely different. And I don't think enough people, especially guys, talk about like their struggles and what they're going through, their emotions. You're taught as a guy, just in general, as a man, you don't express your emotions. You bottle this shit up, you throw it down. You're told you're supposed to be the head of the household. You don't show your protection. You're the breadwinner. You do all these things. You're the protector. So you can't show these things. But I'm learning more and more as I get older, and I'm seeing it around me a lot more of how that mindset impacts people, and how a lot of people are just nosediving straight down instead of continuing to ascend in life. They're just having these same problems, and for me, I've never really looked at it this way because I never really thought mental health was that serious, but until recent, where I had to face the mirror and look in the mirror and see certain things with not just me, but I have a close relationship with some people who are going through it. It made me open my eyes up and look more, and having to talk to you guys and speak about things and open up, because I'm a vault. I like keeping shit in. I don't talk to people, and I've realized that's not the best thing, and you could get to your worst phases in life doing that.
Yeah, man, I think a lot of men do that, Mike. Well, we love you, dude. I think we all love each other very much, and we're very lucky to be in each other's lives, regardless of whether we're doing this podcast. And, sharing this kind of stuff can always be difficult, but at the same time, I think it's really necessary. Guys are all human beings, too. We look tough or whatever, try to act tough more in general, but there's not a lot of outlets for men to be able to just kind of like fight club it out. And I think a lot of guys, and like I said, girls do this too, but like a lot of people in general, we think by talking, and when you talk about these types of subjects, you need an environment that feels safe, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of like the other variable there. So I encourage people to reach out. I did see this one commercial that I think made a lot of sense. I think I remember saying this to my parents. And so there's this commercial where like this guy's like handing the like his groceries to his wife and taking his kids to work, and at the end of the commercial, and he's smiling, right, and then he blows his head off, and then it says, "I'm sorry," and then it says, "The people that aren't feeling well, right, aren't going to tell you." Like check in on.
Oh, it's the soccer one. Is that the soccer one?
Yeah. So it's like, and I was like, that's great, man, because it's like when you're feeling great, you want to tell everybody everything. Like, hey, man, I just woke up. I took a shit. I'm gonna tell everybody I just ate an egg. This is great, you know. But when you feel like shit, you're not trying to broadcast a bunch of stuff. Yeah. So check in on your friends. Check on the people you like. Check on the people you don't like. You know, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my support group, especially these guys and a couple of the other guys hopefully watching. So thanks for sharing, Mike.
Absolutely.
I was gonna jump into some stuff here too on decision making. Chris has a good series on leadership. I was going to do a little bit on decision making, just from behavioral stuff. So I thought that might be an interesting thing. And so there's a cool little thing between left and right brain. I think a lot of people experience professionally. And one thing I realized, especially being in New York with these guys this past week, is that I'm definitely whatever brain is the not. The organized brain, the non-linear side. I can play in that world for sure. I got some gifts, right? But I live in that non sort of creative world. But I'm still able to be somewhat productive, and especially when I really want to focus. And so I wanted to sort of give a little bit of understanding on how people like me, creatives, people that sort of like, are fueled by curiosity, still are able to achieve meaningful goals, right, without completely like letting their lives go to the shit. And so one of the things that we do, or like one of the things that you can do, or whatever, I'm just speaking specifically from experience, is something that I call, or that I think they call it a pact. Right. And so like linear thinkers are used to making linear goals where there's a clear objective, right? And then that's broken down by steps. Right. And then there's measurement along the way. And I think that's great if that works for you. And if it doesn't, it doesn't mean that you don't work, is what I'm trying to say. It doesn't mean you're not functional.
You're just lazy pieces of shit.
You're just lazy pieces of shit, right? But lazy pieces of shit can also have a great time and make a lot of money. So if you want to do that, listen to what I have to say and don't listen to what this dick has to say. If you want to work hard as shit the rest of your life, listen to him. What was I going to say? So anyways, the way that the sort of like the ideation or the creative side, or at least how I try to make my goals or make myself productive is through making pacts. And what I like to do is, instead of starting out with a clear objective, the way I would linearly, I like to let my curiosity take me down the rabbit holes that, and call it a natural way that I'm interested in, right? So like this podcast is a perfect example of that. Right, we were talking a little bit about the podcast. I talked to Mike about it about a year ago. Chris had mentioned something about, he had learned a lot by sharing with only men, and he wanted to tell people about it. And all these, sorry, I had to
That's
do it.
always my joke.
That's what you had to do. I'm sorry, I had to do it. But and he wanted it, and so like it was an interest for me, and it was a curiosity for me. I've done broadcasts, I've done all this kind of stuff before here, and so like as this thing kind of shaped, and like I noticed that Mike was being a douchebag, and I thought like, hey man, I'm tired of calling both of these motherfuckers, and all the time. So why don't we just talk it out on the show? Right? It just happened that we launched during a really political season, but the whole point of the show was so the three of us could talk about shit like this, right? And so the show became what it is, and now we have a show, a great audience. We have a couple viewers, we got lots of subscribers. I think it's a great thing.
Two, my mom and Mike's mom are only two viewers.
I love it.
Why do you always have to throw my mom into this?
Because your mom and my mom are our biggest fans.
Mike, your mom watches? I'm sorry, I didn't know
you
that.
always make jokes about my mom, and she's watching it. I'm like, when I go over, and
why
I have
didn't
to
you
call
start
her and
with?
talk to her.
Why didn't you
I
start?
have to talk to her on the phone, and she was like, "Why does they always say something about me?" And I was sitting there, I was like, "I don't know. That's a running gag."
Next time, start with, "Hey, my mom's watching the show."
I'm gonna start next episode with that. I'm gonna say, "Hey guys, my
Sorry,
mom
Mrs.
is
Zettel.
watching."
It's not personal. We're just picking on your son.
Who's
Anyways,
Miss
let me
Zettel?
finish this whole thing before I forget what I was going to say. So the way that happens is like, this is a curiosity of mine, and then so when you make a pact, right? It's starting with objective and then, clear steps. A pact is basically something that you've engaged that you're curious in. And then you make a decision to say, then here's the equation. I'm going to do X for this amount of time, right? And so, like I say, hey, I would love to see how this podcast goes. I'm going to try this for a year, right? And then you do that, right? And that's how you can make your curiosity actionable. It doesn't have to be linear. And with packs, right? And that's how you can manage more than one project at the same time as well. I mean, I don't know, Mike. I'm just gonna have to kick you off the show. You're just too much of a liability. You're like a censorship machine over there.
There's a running gag going.
All right.
So
that was a good segment that
interesting.
Your mom ruined.
That's interesting, Ricardo, because
Mom, please forgive them for their jokes.
For the record, it's left is analytical, right is creative.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, I always try to remember it because left engineer, right creative. I don't know the R and the E. I don't know why that works, but whatever. So I don't like to do what Ricardo talked about because I'm definitely more analytical, obviously. And so for me, having a long-term goal in the future without steps to achieve it is that seems silly. Right?
It's the conversation about anxiety, right?
Yeah, it's just and I'm the kind of person that every day I like to make a list. If it's only something stupid, attend a meeting, I just want to see that I checked a box. You know what I mean? I just need the visual to check a box saying that I accomplished something that day. I think that's honestly why I go to the gym. I try to go to the gym every day just so I've checked that box, right? It's checked. I can move on. I can do other things.
Shower with men.
Yeah, that too. So it's interesting to see it from the other hemisphere side. It makes more sense. You set something. You set sort of I guess that makes sense. A pact, right, with yourself. Hey, I'm going to do this thing for 6 months and see what happens. And then
pretty much. It's
I will it as it goes. Yeah.
Technically it's I will action for duration, and then it's sort of like a fundamental block of personal experimentation, right? So it's and I guess I wouldn't want to call it goals.
That gives yourself the freedom to play within those rules, but you don't want to define it so strictly that you can't, that you feel
that exactly.
I'm the other way around, where I feel like it's too ambiguous. And I need I need more definition. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool, but it's interesting. We still get stuff done. So both sides together.
Yeah, touch tips.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
Snoodling.
Now you want to know why we make the jokes about you?
You want to snoodle later?
There.
Anyway, so I'll have a little bit more stuff on decision making, but creatives mostly. I'm going to do it from as both sides as possible. This one just caught my eye because I was kind of thinking about sort of how it is that I am able, as a human being, as these guys know, flopping around all over in the wind, still able to be productive and do a bunch of different stuff. And
Mike, are you more of a left?
Yeah, Mike, are you more of a left or right?
I'm actually
both.
mixed. Yeah, I'm actually mixed.
He's pretty good.
When it comes to I think when it comes to the left,
he's pretty fucking creative, man.
Yeah, I think I'm not as outspoken with my creative side as often. I keep it very close to the knit. Obviously, we talk.
If you were less
talk a lot though.
If you were less grumpy, you'd be more creative.
And if I smoked as much weed as you, I'd be extremely creative.
Jesus Christ, I'm not even smoking weed.
No, I'm a combination of both. I think when we talk, when we're in our group message or we're together, and we're talking about ideas, because we talk a lot about business ideas, what we want to do, how we want to expand the podcast, how we want to get the content out there. I feel more comfortable with you guys, so I can open up and talk about ideas and talk about things. I don't just go out there and kind of, just start throwing ideas off the wall. But also, I will say this, in my field, I have to be creative, because I have to be creative with arguments, defenses, and stuff like that.
You're very logically creative, and I've workshopped a couple projects with you that are creative, and yeah, you're really creative too. Work with Andre, shout out Andre Cotier, whatever his last name is.
There's a book called Psychological Safety. It's really good if you check it out.
Psychological safety. Yeah, maybe we can put it in the description or something.
There's
when we
another
post
book
the
called
show.
Showering with Chris.
Dude, that's a big book.
It's also it's
It's
called
got all the
Hammer Time.
names. Yeah,
It's called Hammer
it's got the
Time.
name of all the
So
individuals.
more decision making stuff, guys, or I guess what's the best way for me to talk about my behavioral curiosities is I guess decision making. You take it how you will. Hopefully that helps some creatives out there not feel so bad about kind of jumping into stuff, but you definitely have to assign yourself the accountability. That's the part that I think is important. Like you don't have to write the fucking goal down. But if you're like, hey man, I really like plants. I would love to grow 7 plants in the next 6 months. I'm going to try this for 6 months, but then do it. Right.
Right.
So Gen X mentality not working for Gen Z. This is a kind of an ongoing topic that's been going on. What am I, Gen Z? I'm Gen X,
You're
right?
Gen X.
I'm Gen
You're
X.
Gen
I'm
X.
Gen X. So that's my perspective. This is Mike's topic.
No, that's
Chris's
topic.
topic. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so Mike and I are millennials. I'm technically a millennial, like barely a millennial, but yeah. So basically, it was I was watching some stuff about how like the Gen X generation is like the bootstraps, right? Like they're drinking out of a hose in their childhood, eating dirt, doing all that stuff, and they're more of a just hunker down and get things done, not worry so much. I mean, they're definitely not the mental health generation, and and so I think a lot of Gen X, and some of us that are like old millennials, we kind of feel sort of the same way. And so that mentality of like just knuckling down and doing your 9 to 5 and like getting that work done was great, like in the 90s, even the early 2000s, when like the market was great, the houses were cheap, minimum wage didn't really matter that much, you know, and like it feels like I mean a lot of things were going well, and so yeah, if you could knuckle down, kind of fight through your 20s without making any really bad decisions, and just keep like kind of earning some money and saving, then eventually you would come out on top you would come out on the other side better off than you were when you were younger. But the feeling for the Gen Z generation doesn't feel like that method works anymore, right? Because costs are so high, school is expensive, houses are expensive, cost of living is ridiculous, gas is out of control. I mean, even eggs are expensive now, right? And so that whole like, oh, just lace up your bootstraps and like hunker down and like work hard for what? That's kind of like the mentality that we're seeing from the Gen Z. It's like, well, why? Because like I had to do a lot, because now you need like 120K a year just to do the same thing that you would for 70 back in the 90s. And so
I don't blame them. Can you imagine like getting out of college and like a house that like is smaller than your parents' $1 million?
Well, it's seen as being lazy, or seen as it being like unwilling to cooperate or work within the system or whatever. And I feel like that's kind of a naive attitude to take. I'm not saying that all Gen Z is amazing. I'm not saying that the Gen X attitude doesn't have merit, but I'm saying I think just making them black and white is not working, and there's got to be some sort of middle ground.
Yeah, the system's not going to change without a little resistance.
Right. Yeah. I don't know how you guys feel about this, if you agree or disagree.
Can I give a little insight?
Sure.
Can I raise my hand?
From the actual millennial, from the real millennial.
Well, I don't want your mom to get mad.
Shut the fuck up, you 80-year-old. Yeah, I think our generation it was definitely different in a lot of perspectives. The cost to do things were cheaper. We also experienced a lot of things, traveling. A lot of people traveled. A lot of people didn't have a career or take their career serious enough until they got a little bit older. They traveled. They went out with their friends. They went clubbing. They did all the things that you're supposed to do in your 20s. And hopefully you didn't make that big mistake. Hopefully you didn't do something where you bankrupt yourself. Hopefully you didn't do something where you started a family too early, or you had kids or something where you were able to still live your life. This new generation still can do this they still can do the same things, but they just have to be a little bit more strategic with the way they do the things. You can't take 3 trips a year. You can only take 1 trip a year. And if you're going to do that, make sure you take full advantage of it by going to somewhere that you wanted to, because you know it's going to be more expensive, and go with people that you want to go with. If you want to go, yeah, it's harder. Don't get me wrong. It's definitely harder to achieve a lot of things. I'm not saying that all those things are attainable. You still can do it. You just have to be smarter doing it. And are you able to go to the clubs every weekend and get popping bottles like we do? No, you can't do that. Okay. You could do it one day a weekend. So if you're gonna do Thursday, which is the cheapest day.
The cheapest day. So as a Gen Xer, I give zero fucks about what millennials or the Gen Z is doing because, and here I'll explain this. All right, so,
okay, yeah, please.
So Gen Xers.
What are you? You're from the '80s, right? You're a baby boomer.
78 Gen Xer, and so the Gen Xers, we feel like we're fighting a spiritual war. Right, so we don't give a fuck what either generation is doing, but before us or after us, we're the ones who are going out and saying, "Hey, man, remember that thing that homeboy taught you? It's not the right thing." We're the ones that are going out and sort of chopping at the wood of the previous conserved generations and saying, "Hey, this shit did not fucking work for us." And like the younger generations, I mean, that's just resistance to the system that didn't work. I mean, however you want to call it, by quiet quitting or being like, "Hey, I'm not going to a fucking office." Whatever, it's going to manifest because the system isn't working efficiently. And our generation, Gen Xers, we're the ones who are fighting this kind of weird psychological spiritual war. The Joe Rogans, the Elon Musks, all these people, right? And so, like, these are, I don't know, Elon Musk might be 75, but these people
with 85 kids,
yeah, that are going out. So that's why Gen X kind of is like, we don't really get involved as much. The bootstrapping thing, I think is something that obviously we learned from the boomers. But what I see Gen X doing is transforming that energy into sort of like mental discipline, right? Like the bootstrapping is like, hey, man, don't work for a corporation, but do go to the fucking gym every day, pussy. So that's kind of the message that the Gen Xers are doing with the bootstrapping. We don't give a fuck if you don't come to the office, but you better not be out of shape when I see you or something. You know what I mean? It's like, who knows? But, we definitely have that bootstrap sort of psychology from the boomer generation. But I think that the positive thing is that we're transforming it a little bit, into sort of like personal growth. How's that?
Shout out Scorpion Percussion.
Shout out Scorpion Percussion.
Percussion.
Yeah, we should be doing a St. Patrick's Day promotion. Thank you for telling me that, Mike. That's a good idea.
What are you talking about? That's why he's doing. Oh, you're talking.
No, Scorpion drumsticks are dipped green. Yeah, if you guys check out.
I'm throwing a corporate event on Monday, so I just want you guys to know.
Oh, that's right, the one you made that flyer for.
Yeah, I'm doing my part.
You're Irish, right?
We all are.
Irish?
We're all Irish.
More Scottish than Irish, but yeah.
I'm Irish.
I'm talking about you in general. You're Scottish?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's Scottish.
Oh, okay.
You tell by
Gotcha.
it's much lighter.
I saw the red hair. I was going with Irish.
Your hair is
Irish.
sort of blonde, but has red in it.
Yeah. From this view now with the camera, it looks red. It's not like I hung out with you.
If you were fully blonde, you'd look like Gold Member.
Oh, I was a total towhead. I was a total towhead earlier in my life.
That was a good one. Oh God.
Well, anyways. But yeah. So I mean, whatever. I think everyone's doing, their part at least, and being able to bitch and complain about all the bullshit we've had to deal with and growing up.
Well, us millennials, we're the whiniest.
Well, they have the biggest platform, right? Like, imagine if we had a social media and a bunch of hours to just bitch all day long. Like, we would have bitched a lot too, dude.
Well, our parents are boomers, and so we're like anti everything they said.
Your parents are boomers. My parents were from like the original founding fathers.
Yeah,
I was just gonna say yeah.
No, we actually had to look it up. They were so old. They're from the silent generation.
Yeah. Well, your dad is actually another generation because it's so old.
My dad's a fucking alien.
My mom is a boomer,
beast.
hardcore boomer. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. My stepmom, I think, is kind of boomy. She's boomer for sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of parents, guys, one of my topics this week is breaking generational curses. So what sparked this topic is I saw a an ad, a post with Denzel Washington in it, and the post was a quote from him that said, "Hey, look, if you're going to be breaking generational curses and thinking that you're going to be getting along with your family members, you got it wrong." And so, this whole generational curse thing came to mind for me because, and I think I talked a little bit about this with Mike. It was a while back, man. You may not remember, but I do believe the three of us here are sort of the ones that are breaking our generational curse. Hopefully, right? And so, how do you know this? Let's first identify: are you the one that's breaking the generational curse? Well, first of all, generational curses are basically things that have been sort of like handed down, that are traits, and that produce sort of a negative outcome, right? Whether it's in relationships or whatever it is, and like it just happens over and over again. So pretty self-explanatory. But the reason the way that you can identify, or that I learned about this stuff about generational curses, was that it always started off with this term called black sheep, right? So if you ever feel like you're the black sheep of the family, there's a really good chance that you're the one that has to break, or is meant to break those generational curses behaviorally, right? Whatever your traits are, right? Because otherwise you'd fit right into the system. So that's a really good way to identify, first of all, if you are somebody who is sort of predetermined to have the ability to break some of these generational curses, is if you're the black sheep. And now, once you've identified this, I think we all have, right? Generational curses, for me specifically, have, I guess, manifested themselves in unhealthy relationships. Right? This is something that can happen over generation, back and forth. The most common generational curse is known as addiction, right? People say that addiction is sort of a generational curse, and that doesn't have to be substance addiction. This addiction can be to a perspective or state of mind, like call it bigotry, right? That may be toxic, right? Or machismo or something like that, or like, you know what I'm saying? Or whatever you want to call it, racism, another one, right? And so these are, some of the ways that generational curses can really, fuck up your day, dude. And behaviorally, the best way sort of to deal with or to identify and start the process of breaking the generational curse, in behavioral science, we call it a genogram. Genogram. A genogram is basically a map of your genealogy, right, from a role perspective. Father, son, grandfather, this from your perspective. And going through and making a genogram, it helps you understand, first of all, it baselines all the behaviors and sort of the traits that have been kind of handed down. And then going through the process of analyzing some of these, basically the trees and the stems on the genogram, you're able to sort of see things that have been following you, down your genealogy, right? And then the negative things are going to appear a lot quicker. And then so one of the things that it's important is reaching out to people like in your own family too, and getting to know them on their level. Once you've just, instead of, because as a black sheep, you're kind of resisting, right? And so like if your grandma is a bigot and you're like, oh man, I don't want to talk to grandma, like if you want to break a generational curse, you're going to have to find a way to get some information from grandma, right? And then add that information to your genogram. And
are we getting sponsored by Ancestry.com? And I'm not aware of
I did not say to take a Chinese DNA test. Do not take any DNA tests. Do not send your DNA
it to some. I was just gonna say to
anywhere.
Some company. Yeah, don't do that.
Right.
I highly advise you do not do that.
The only place your DNA should be going in is your partner. That's about it.
Oh my god.
Wow.
Oh my
Anyways,
god.
Back to breaking generational curses. And so using a genogram, it can, or actually just building it is what's going to help you identify the things. And then once you're aware of the behaviors, man, the process for changing behaviors, hey man, I want to quit this, quit that. And this can take a really, really long time. Before I let the boys comment on this, one of the things that the professionals use, I'm not a professional, that has been very helpful in breaking generational curses and identifying generational curses, especially subconscious ones, right? Because there'll be a guy who's like, man, I don't understand why every time I get married, no, I don't care if you interrupt. Why did I get married, right? And so like, and then he's like, and why does every wife leave me, and so forth. And so like once you are able to like identify, that you actually have a generational curse, or that there are parts about your personality that have been handed down to you. What are you guys doing, dude?
Just laughing,
We're laughing.
listening.
And I forgot what I was going to say. No, once you identify that there is a generational curse, and that some of it's subconscious, right? Constellation therapy is something that can help you sort of do at least an immediate check-in with, like, your family roles, especially like grandparents, kids, especially, and then like and your own. Helps kind of resolve a little bit of confusion. I think a lot of us don't really go back and map how our childhood experiences and the roles that we affected. Maybe you saw your parents as authoritarians, maybe you didn't, and those are all things that have an effect on it. So constellation therapy isn't really like therapy, it's more of like a practice, and you guys could look this up. So this is some tools that you could use to help self-assess and identify whether you're suffering from, or whether there's some generational curses that you might be able to do something about. That's where I was going with all this.
So Dr. Gabor says that trauma is generational, and that all addiction is trauma-based. So I don't know if that helps keep some things in perspective. From my own anecdotal experience, I did something similar to this, not because I've ever heard of constellation therapy, but yeah, I realized through a bunch of different methods that like I was essentially a third adult in my childhood, and so that has played. Understanding that has like helped me understand like how I got to where I am. I wasn't really a kid. I was just like another adult for like most of my childhood, and so I think that's why I misbehaved so much in my 20s.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Generational
I'm sorry.
curses. Generational curses.
I'm sorry.
So
I
it's-
Good
out
morning,
right there.
Vietnam.
So, how do you have any
Live from New
generational
York.
curses
This is-
growing up in Switzerland, Roger Federer?
What was the topic again?
Yeah, you can't talk
On the
about.
screen. It's reading
No,
up on
Mike can't talk about generational curses because his mom is watching.
No comment. Sorry,
My mom's
Mom.
watching too.
It all depends. I think a lot of people deal with it in different ways. There's different scenarios that come up. I can tell you I have a bunch of siblings, so there's a lot of things that happened growing up that, I lashed out in a lot of ways. I did a lot of stupid things. I was a loose cannon. I also have a brother that's very close in age, so we would call it frickin' frack. We would get into a lot of mischief, and we would do a ton of stuff. I think,
Statute of
Now-
limitation expired, so you can talk about it.
yeah, I think now that I'm older, though,
Yeah, but
I
that's
can
what makes you
identify
fun.
those things.
That's what makes
Yeah,
you
but-
fun.
Yeah, I think as I gotten older, though, like one thing about getting older is you start looking back at your youth and you start thinking about the things you did and why you did it. And I was like lashing out in a lot of ways. I was looking for attention for certain things. I was just being a stupid kid. And you have to really digest that. You really have to understand why you have a certain behavior and how you got to that point.
I
Yeah,
think
Youngest?
a lot of it has to do with. I mean,
No, I'm the middle child.
I've known Mike for, I don't know, like not 10 years, but a lot of years. But I think a lot of it, based on some of the things you talked about here on the podcast, again, I'm not a professional, is that, I think a couple of episodes ago, Mike had brought up the fact that he had some trouble and challenges growing up expressing himself verbally.
Yep.
Right? And so to me, it makes sense that you would lash out or try to express yourself physically with actions and things to get the attention
used
that
to
you
fu-
normally would be getting vocally, right? But you couldn't because you weren't comfortable.
I used to fight a lot when I was younger. I would used
I'll
to. I
send
used to
you
do,
the bill.
Yeah, I. So, if you can't realize, a lot of people can't realize, I grew up with a speech issues. So I had to go to speech therapy. I had to do a lot of stuff like that. And going through high school, I got made fun of for it a lot. So when somebody made fun of me, instead of
Beat that ass.
trying to, instead of arguing back with them, I just used my fist or I tackled them or whatever. And I went to public school, so you just get thrown in detention for like a couple of days, and you're like, all right, whatever, I'm back in school, I'm fine. So you last out a lot. I last out a lot.
That's good. Thanks for my reaction was very different. Somebody would make fun of me in high school, and then I would just throw a huge party. Okay, hold on. Mike's going to take a little break. Anyway, it doesn't matter because we're going to talk about Marxism versus Locke. This is.
I was going to say something before. I know Mike.
Oh yeah, go for it.
I just wanted to make sure that it's clear that I think it's very important that in the self-discovery that you're not attempting to do it to point blame.
Yes, judgment is
important.
not part of healing.
It's just understanding how you got to where you are now, not to point fingers at the causal factors. That defeats the whole purpose.
So I did the constellation therapy. Shout out Virginia More, that's my sister. She got it for me. We had lost a brother and a sister, so we had some trauma earlier on from that, and so it really helped her. She got it for me, helped out a lot. It was cool. But one of the things that stuck out the most is like you do this exercise where you like close your eyes and you like envision yourself, like you see yourself as a kid, you see yourself as an adult or whatever, and then you position yourself based on in front of, next to, or whatever your family, right? And like when you were a kid, were you in front of your dad? Were you next to him? And while you're visualizing, right, they ask you, okay, like, your dad is in front of you, okay, so like, what do you see, right? And then you start describing. The first thing she said was like, no, don't judge. And I was like, but how am I supposed to describe, the way that I felt, right, without judgment? And what she said, it was really interesting, was that she said that basically she's like, well, who are you to judge, right? And then I was like, what do you mean? She's like, well, what kind of experience do you have to judge? And so the whole purpose that like kind of made me wake up was that I was passing judgment because I felt some sort of false sense of authority, right? And that I think is coupled with victimhood, right? And that victimhood charges you up and it makes you think you have the right to judge. And what she made me realize is that I didn't, right? And it makes it a lot harder at the beginning to digest those transgressions. But then you come to them and you start seeing them from a level of understanding, and you start saying, okay, so my parents weren't the super people that I thought they were, or I thought they were trying to be. They're just regular motherfuckers with real problems. And then this was one of their problems. And instead of saying, hey, you're a dick for having that problem, I can understand why you had that problem. I'm not judging you for it. And now I understand that that's something that I need to correct, but that's in my hands.
Right. That's why you are the way you are, or you behave a certain way as a result. Yeah, not.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna give you guys a New York term. When you get into a fight, it's called shooting the ones.
Shooting the what?
Shooting the ones.
Shooting the ones?
That's the dumbest shit I've ever heard.
That's the dumbest shit.
Well, that's why you're fucking from Oregon in the middle of goddamn nowhere.
Mike did take us to some dope ass places. Shout out Electric Lemon, New York City.
Tao, man, that place.
Tao.
Shout
Shout out Tao fried rice. Fried rice.
Yeah.
Shout out
Tao
to
fried rice with Mike's fork. Tastes better with Mike's fork.
Yeah. Why did you steal my fork? For real?
Because I was
How about this?
trying to eat some fucking fried rice, and you were bogarting the fucking fork.
I gotta shout out two people. Shout out my friend Alex K, promoter from Nebula, New York City
shout out
nightclub.
Nebula.
Haven't seen him in years. It was great. Shout out my friend AJ Rodney. Used to be a manager of one of the top nightclubs in New York City. Still knows all the people. Hooked me, Chris, and Rick up. Got into a club where what was it? Bingo players. Didn't have to wait in a line.
I thought it was bingo.
People.
I actually thought there was going to be bingo.
So I got to shout out Nebula, great spot. If you're in New York City, gotta hit that club up. Also, AJ, appreciate the friendship, man. Thanks once again.
I want to shout out to Hannah, the chick that I gave her my number and never texted me.
Shout out Hannah. That's awesome. Well, tell me
Yeah,
about
Hannah.
but I mean that was great. But tell me about Marxism and Locke's, and then we can
Okay.
call it a day.
All right. So I have been over the past, I don't know, maybe 5 years, we'll call it, trying to better understand the left because I used to be, like I've said this before, I was a crazy conservative that just assumed that 50% of the population was just retarded, and obviously that's not acceptable life to live. So I was looking into Marxism a little bit, trying to understand, and I feel like this might help everybody if everybody could just take a second. So Locke is a 16th century philosopher,
John Locke.
John Locke. His big thing was life, liberty, and property, and so he felt that everybody had right to property, essentially based on the merit of their own individual labor. And so, but we have to remember this is 16th century, so everybody's like, you have a blacksmith, and you have a shoemaker, and like everybody's kind of working in these small communities, everybody has a job, everybody's doing a thing.
Highly skilled labor.
Right. And so his argument was that everybody has some ownership of their individual work. Marx took that idea, but Marx is the 1880s, right? 1850s. So it's a completely different world. Assembly lines have been introduced at this point. And so Marx's argument was that corporations that have labor on like an assembly line ish, whatever capacity that looks like, are stealing your personal property. The corporation's stealing your personal property because essentially they're saying that it's not really possible to appropriately compensate individual workers for the work that they're doing because it's their own, right? It's their own intellectual property, whatever, however you want to say it. And so that's ultimately how he convinced the lower class to rebel against the bureaucracy, essentially, was because that they weren't getting compensated appropriately for the work that they were doing because they, quote unquote, deserved to own the property. And so when you think about that, I mean, I understand the argument, right? I mean, I feel like in corporate America, if you're just a cog in the machine, it's really hard to, feel like you're getting appropriately compensated for all of the work that you're putting into it, right? But I feel like the argument to that is what we talked about a little bit at the beginning, is like there's a lot of risk that's taken on by the people that created the corporation, by developing a brand and developing a product and doing all that stuff that is hard to quantify. And so, are they really? So if you focus solely on the individual and their, work and their output, but you don't look at it from like a bigger, more holistic perspective, it's very hard. You get kind of lost in translation, right? A little bit. So I just feel like I understand the argument from the left a little bit better now, right? I get it. Like you feel like it's hard to appropriately be compensated for the hard work that you do because you feel like you have individual ownership of that property because you've poured your, quote unquote, blood, heart and soul into it. But it's not a simple black and white equation. It doesn't work just quite like that. I don't know if you have any thoughts, Ricardo.
I have a couple. I mean, like I think, Marxism was a little bit extreme, and I understand the base principles of both of the stuff. And I think Locke too was writing, more for like people who, I want to say he wasn't writing for like factory workers, like from that perspective.
Well, 1600 that didn't exist yet.
Right, exactly. He was just trying to like, figure out, because there was still nobility there, right? And so the question was like, why did nobility get property? And a lot of his thinking was influenced by the fact that nobles were able to leverage property, and that's has a lot to do with the fact that property was still equated with food, right, and growing stuff, right? And so I think there's that there, and so to give you an example of that, so one of the things that people ask a lot is like, why are the nations in Latin America so poorly developed compared to the West and like the North, and so forth, and the governments are all kind of doing that stuff, and one of the biggest things is that they have very loose private property laws. Okay, so one of the things that makes business in the United States is the enforcement of private property laws. And an example would be, would be this. Okay, so my dad was telling me he worked for an international bank, and he was telling me that they put together a program in a Latin American country. I believe it was Peru, right? And so the Peruvian government wanted to stop, or at least cut down on the exportation and manufacturing of cocaine, right? And so the problem was that this cocaine was being was being created on farmland, right? And the farmers who were farming cocaine were paid by the cartels, right? But nobody owned the land. The cartels didn't own the land. There was just no. It was just part of the country.
Yeah,
And
jungle or whatever.
for sure. And so the program that my dad helped sponsor, whatever it was, one where they were asking for a loan for subsidy, and then what they were going to do is they went out to the jungles and with the government and they zoned the land right for growth, and they were going to give the land to the farmers that were farming cocaine on that land, right, and pay them a subsidized price so they wouldn't earn any less money, so that they would if they would farm coffee instead of cocaine, right? And so that's an example of why private property is extremely important, like in an economic system, especially in a system where we're trying to allocate resources. And capitalism has done an excellent job of allocating resources, right? I mean, I'm not going to say as far as from a production standpoint, right? Like, I mean, so you have all these systems that are sort of in place. Now, the thing with communism, which and I'm going to take the devil's advocate, and I know I'm blabbing here, I really don't care. Take the devil's advocate on this, is that what we're seeing with what China's done, right, is sort of this new emergence, right? Because before China kicked ass, everybody had a fucking hard on for globalism. They're like, yeah, man, let's give all our factories to China, and like, let's cut down the trade barriers, and everybody was a globalist. Yeah, yeah. And then all of a sudden, like, okay, no. Right. And so what we're seeing now is a reemergence, I think, which is sort of like this, and I hate to say this, but where like the government takes a larger role, right? Or as Chris was saying, takes risks that companies even they couldn't take, right? To take risks in innovation. Like, hey man, if we're going to do cold fusion, like, I can't wait for it to be, what do you call it? Like for there to be a viable market for it. Like, I need to spend right. And so like, and then I don't want to go broke. And so if the government steps in, so I think China's model with sort of these state, sponsored or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that there is definitely that through Marxism. I do like.
There's a lot of red tape,
And it also makes it more focused about progress, right? Instead of being efficient, because a really efficient economy, right, produces what we have now. It's a bunch of drones, and everyone's fucking unhappy, and people are bringing guns to school. So if we can, focus a little bit more on innovation, right, and because we have a large population, I think that might actually stimulate the economy a little bit.
Well, China as an example, they have a CEO that has a clear strategic vision, and it's to take Taiwan and to take all of sovereign China back under its roof, and so that's essentially what they're doing. They're pushing ahead on that, and they're nuclear energy is a part of it. Their military is 3 times the size of ours. I mean, they're basically doing all this stuff in it's easy when the government is sort of sponsoring all this stuff and funding a lot of it, right? And so there is no private work. It's like if you own a company, then you own it, and the co-owner is the Chinese government, essentially, right? In America, it's much more complicated, obviously, as we know. But what I was kind of my objective here was sort of understanding that there's a conversation that has to be had in that whole thing, right? And it's a argument between how much value is my individual effort and how much value is the risk that I didn't take to start a company, and where's the middle ground, right? And I feel like the best example in our country is like unions, because there is no unions, there's no opportunity for advancement based on the merit of your effort, right? It's you're allowed to make 100 cogs a day. You can't make 101. You can't make 99. And if you made 101, you get in trouble. There's no like, oh, I made 101, so I should get promoted. No. It's you make 100. That's it.
Yeah.
And chances are, if you work there for 20 years, that same position will be making 70 cogs in 20 years, not more, right? Because the the union is always going to fight to get paid more to do less. That's essentially their objective fundamentally. And the longer the union exists, the longer that the union leadership exists, the less you will do for more money. And that's why unions are such a problem for most companies. And that essentially is a socialist. That's socialism in America.
I mean, there's definitely room for, I think, a lot of restructuring. I do believe that unions, they emerged during a time period where
100%.
working conditions were basically almost fatal, you know? And so, like, I believe that they served a really good purpose. Do they work? I have no idea.
There are good unions out there.
For sure.
They do
But,
exist.
you know, and I think let's just get fundamental on it. Like, so, like, you know, if you're doing something by collective bargaining, then you should also be doing some collective resource allocation, right? And so, like, instead of just bargaining and doing stuff, like, what are you literally doing to help workers in general? Like, and you can profit from that, right? Like, what if you started an insurance company or what, you know what I'm saying? Like, all these different new innovations where I think besides just raising the price of labor or even just, you know, how about buying a robotics company so that, you know, you can, like, you know, have some control over, you know, that, and then, like, say, hey, look, we have 10 guys and, you know, this one robot, you know, you're going to pay him a salary and then we're going to give it to these 10 guys and then they're not going to do shit. But because they worked for 15 years before robots came and we unionized, you know, like, there's a lot of safeguarding that can be done and leverage that can be done from agreements and capital allocation instead of just this, you know, kind of what do you call it, the zero sum mentality. Okay, we want more money for less work. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole. I just really want to. I really want everyone to understand that there is an argument for both sides of whatever coin you're looking at, and we have gotten to this point where we no longer are allowed to talk about opposing arguments. So it's like, and like I just watched an interview with Peterson and Bill Maher from, like, I don't know.
I heard did they get into a fight or something?
No, it was a while ago. This is like back when his book came out. And Peterson was like, if you're not having conversations where there is a risk of offending someone,
Oh yeah.
then why are you talking? Like, there's no point, like, unless you're just, you know, jerking each other off. He didn't say jerking each other off, but basically that's what you're doing because you're just agreeing with everybody says, and that's not really a conversation. That's just bullshitting. So if you are having real conversations with people, you don't have to agree, and when you don't agree, then you should be able to, like, have a conversation and, like, say, hey, look, you know, like, I see your point, I don't agree with it, and here's why, and then, you know, go back and forth and find some middle ground where you both can exist on opposite sides, disagreeing with each other, and still live in harmony. That is a reality that is possible.
Absolutely. Mike, you alive there, buddy? Everything good?
Yeah, everything's all right.
Nice. Well, guys, that's pretty much it for this show. We got through all of our topics except for a couple boring ones. As always, we'll be back next week at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern here on YouTube, X, Twitch, Rumble, and then you can find all of our past episodes. Yeah, find all of our past episodes on Spotify. So we're on Spotify. That's a big up to that. And yeah, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube. And you know, we'll see you next week, guys. As always,
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, happy St. Patrick's Day. My boy Elvis in Indianapolis. My boy Mike, no last name, in New York. And I'm your host Rico here in San Diego. You guys have a good one. We'll see you next time.
Peace.